We're 640 Films. I'm Varun Ramadyani. Alex, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
I'm Alex Leone.
I'm Parker Eisen.
I'm Spencer Swenson, and today we're discussing Sundance Short Film Program 1 and 2. Why are we doing that, Alex?
So we 640 is a collective of people that over the last couple years have made a couple of short films along with a couple features, and we realized we don't really actively seek out short films. We make them, but we don't often really watch them. We saw this as an opportunity to really immerse ourselves in what a short film scene today looks like. I mean, obviously it's only Sundance, it's only one perspective, but this was a cool way for us to really see what other people are making and how people are using the short film medium.
Yeah, so basically we'll be watching every movie pretty much the day of our recording, and we've all sat with the films, taken notes, thought about them, and really what we want to do is just talk about each film in a casual way while still analyzing its themes, form, content, etc., and just sort of, come at it all from our own unique perspectives on film. And there's no 10 minutes for each film, be talk about a film as much as we want to or as little as we want to, just based on how we felt about it.
And to kind of add on, we wanted to approach this a little bit more casually, in the sense that, just like I'm sure everybody who's watching this has done with friends, when you watch a movie, you want to discuss it with people after you watch it over a couple beers or a couple seltzers, right? And so that's kind of the form that we're trying to use,
Yep. All right. With that, we good to get into the first one?
Yep. Everything else to add?
All right. So first up, we have Debaters, directed by Alex Heller. In a debate chamber, affluent high schoolers argue a bill on minimum wage in an effort to impress two working-class adult judges. Who would like to start?
Parker.
Go ahead, Varun, go ahead.
Well, we kind of cheated on this one. We all kind of had a mini discussion about this one, seeing as it was, the kickoff of the short film program, and I think we were all in agreement about this one.
Weird way to start the program. I don't know if there's any thought that goes into selecting the order that the short film is going in.
Right?
I would imagine there is. Weird way to start.
In some ways, weird, but in some ways, very, I think, predictable. I think, I think we're all familiar with, the type of movies that come from Sundance. And this is something that we're going to hit on later in the discussion. But, watching these films back to back to back, a formula starts to present itself almost like a checklist. And I think this one, at its surface, at least to me, presented itself as kind of the most Sundance movie.
Yeah, definitely in a certain category for me. I mean, it was I went in excited, and after Debaters I was less excited. It had it's just Varun, you said something yesterday that stuck with me, and you said, "Am I too stupid for this movie?" And I said, "No, I think this movie's just conservative. It's just the most exploring the most neoliberal marketplace of ideas kind of thing, where anyone can come up and if you convince your take enough, your idea then somehow something like minimum wage, which is what they debate in the film, becomes it's just the way it approaches it is it's a bit befuddling.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it kind of takes center stage out of nowhere too. I was bought into the beginning of the movie. It was snappy, it was energetic. We were setting the stakes of this debate stage. I was interested in our lead and his performance anxiety. It seemed to have a heart and direction. And then it did get sidetracked on the discussion of the debate, and very sincerely went towards having a position about the federal minimum wage.
yeah, it was just are we actually talking about the minimum wage now?
Yeah, it sort of starts off with that like cliched, like know-it-all kind of character, just like demolishing the debate, you know. And you're like, okay, I know this character, I know this type. And you think like the character it follows in the beginning that, yeah, like you said, it's about like his performance anxiety. But then like for me, like where the film has like the way it used like its narrative and characters got really weird is like with the judge of Bethany, who's somehow like it's almost like the like director reaching in and like manipulating the like environment to like get this weird point across. Like the character sort of like intrudes herself into the debate and she's supposed to be one of the judges. Um
I didn't understand that character at all.
in the log
Yeah,
I think the idea is that she's like trying to pull something out of him, you know? It's like she's taking this kid who is like a debate novice and she's trying to force him to like defend his position.
it-
Um
he's forced to like in the beginning the character who is Crow raising the minimum wage to what 15, is that what they're talking about? And at 15
Yeah.
or whatever, she demolishes her points, all the typical points, and then randomly assigned is to like the character it follows is the opposite point of view. And he says that he was for it, but the Bethany coaxes him to debate anyway, and so he just bumbles over a couple things, and then eventually she like it's very weird how it happens. And then she like gets him to start saying for it, and then he says basically a shitty job is better than no job, and then it cuts to a kid who says dead ass, and then everyone agrees with him, and then it rolls out with dubstep. So it's like very weird like how it approaches it.
yeah, I agree. I think like just to go over my notes. First note was Jerry from Succession question mark. And then after that, like I agree with the substance of it, like the fact that it turned into a $15 minimum wage fight just it felt very strange to me. Um, but I think like my biggest thing with this film is I understand what it's trying to do. I just don't think it goes hard enough into the style.
Like
Like like the outro music for the film is like this Western thing, you know? With like the whistles, like the good, the bad, and the ugly type score situation. And I wish they had like leaned into that if that's what they were trying to do. Like it really like just from like a pure perspective of like camera work and editing, I didn't feel any type of like heightened intensity or anxiety in the room, you know, like they could have really played around with camera work and with editing and with sound design in ways that would have been a lot of fun. And I think was it seemed like what they were trying to do, but it just it didn't achieve that, and because of that, it felt like kind of a drag.
And because it started with this like look at the kids' performance anxiety and then got sidetracked with the minimum wage discussion, I feel like we didn't get the conclusion in that arc of him overcoming anxiety. Like, I guess he sort of walked out like the coolest kid in the class at the end, but like there wasn't a resolution in like his relationship with his parent that was dropping him off, or like with the coach or with the other students. Like, there's no
Yeah,
character
exactly.
interplay there at the end.
Like, it would have been like, obviously, it's a bit of a cliche, but it would have been a great way to end it to have, like, the mom pick him up, you know? Like,
do you
make
think
it like a full circle moment.
do you think it's trying to like paint his like class position as different in the beginning of the movie?
I don't understand the class dynamics. Are they all supposed to be rich kids? Is that what the deal is?
dude, I don't know.
According to the log line, and then it's like, and then it says the judges are like working class, and but they like don't like that's just the log line. Like that is not depicted in the movie. That like
They say that
they're-
one thing about like, have you ever worked a job before? And then the Kenneth Lonergan judge carries on and is like, I used to mow lawns when I was your age or something
these
like
kids
that.
are like 14 to 16. It looks like
Right.
like
Yeah.
they can barely like his mom dropped him off. Like he can't even drive.
Alex, you said like you understood like what this movie was trying to do. Like I genuinely didn't. I was just when the credits started rolling, like I was just so confused. It's like the judge character when she interjects herself, it just completely unsettles the rhythm and the flow of the characters. And maybe that's the point, but it just caught me off guard and I was confused and I didn't know what to hold on to as a viewer.
Yeah,
And then
who was it trying to be like satire and failed? Like, because I was like, is it trying to satirize something? But then
I
don't know what it's satirizing.
I don't think it's satire proper. I think like I think they were trying to make debate into like this big thing, you know, like this big intense thing. Or at least that's how they were building it up. And then it undercuts itself with the like minimum wage fight thing. I don't know. The more I talk about it, the less I think I understand it.
the discussion itself is like the whole movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is it when you're watching it? Where is this coming from? I don't know. Another thing I thought was weird too is like, why is the main character why is the main character Indian? And then what is the purpose of having his mom, who's also Indian, in the movie? Like what?
That's what I was saying. Like, is it trying to like depict like his class position as like a second generation immigrant or something? Because his mom's speaking Hindi to him, right? Like in the beginning.
It is some. I didn't quite pick up what language it is. I don't think it's Hindi, but
It's something from the subcontinent.
yeah. But I was gonna say too, like he has an accent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he spent some time in India, you know.
Yeah, I feel like it's trying to create that awkwardness then with like, oh, look, like now the immigrant has to like defend not raising minimum wage. Is that what it's trying to do? Like,
Dude, I don't know, man. That's what I'm saying. I'm just too stupid for the movie. Like
Like
way over my head.
all right. Any final thoughts on debaters before we move on to the next?
Yeah.
I have one final thought, and that was Spencer. I chuckled as I saw 1104 roll across the crowd.
Oh, yeah. Shout out 1104, Chicago production.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was gonna say I thought specifically the meat of the debate scene, the camera, the angles, the way it's cut together was like it didn't keep me interested. I feel like it wasn't really like trying to explore any new, unique, engaging ways to frame this debate and keep the audience hooked on. It was a lot of shot, reverse shot, reverse shot. Show this character that we haven't seen in a minute. Show this character we haven't seen in a minute.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the type of cinematography that I just like don't like.
Yeah, it felt like standard coverage, you know.
Yeah.
It felt like there was that was something I wrote as well. It felt like there was a lot of different shots, but none of them like meant anything, you know?
And
You're right.
yeah, exactly. It wasn't communicating anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of where like that confusion is coming from.
Yeah, I think like the film, like I said, I was like, is it satire? But the form didn't like indicate anyway, like give like a viewpoint either way on like what it was trying to communicate.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next. I also want to say, before we talk about this next one, we're not here to just shit talk every movie. There's some films here that I really loved.
Except this one.
I just thought that was important to say before we move on. So number 2, Hoops, Hopes, and Dreams, which was a documentary. The untold story of how Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and an all-star team of civil rights activists took to basketball courts to rally young voters while winning hearts of communities, and how their strategy has echoed in contemporary politics. See, I just like to start by saying the synopsis there, I don't think they fully made the connection of that in the film, that like Martin Luther King was going to basketball courts explicitly to rally people to his cause. Was that something I missed?
I think the movie started out very strong with like setting the stakes of the civil rights movement, giving us like the tension and anxiety of the times, the like risk of being an activist. And then it like slowly unspooled from there into just like this really apolitical, vague mess, you know? And I don't think it like honed in on the specific relation between sport and activism. And I think it definitely wasn't helping having like the mixed media animation and documentary style. Like it was trying too much and not delivering enough.
I agree. I think honestly, when it started, I was really excited because I was like, "Oh, this is cool. This is a guy that like worked personally with Martin Luther King, and he has like an intimate perspective on the guy."
Yeah.
I was really excited for that. And then, uh, like you said, it just it kind of fell apart. Like I don't feel like I really got any insight on like what the connection is or like why Martin Luther King was playing basketball. Was it something he just did for personal enjoyment? Was it something he did to like connect with the community? I don't know.
I think the, like animated sequences painted that stuff as like so overly romantic, it made it hard to like
Yeah.
connect with the like really
Yeah.
like utility of basketball as like connecting with people like through sports, which
Yeah.
when it just had the first guy talking, like I agree with you, Spencer. It did have that, and then it brought in like a like subject matter expert on like basketball and sports as bringing people together, which like don't
Mhm.
like
At that point, it felt like we had lost the plot a little bit.
and then it takes the turn.
Oh, okay, yeah, the second half of the film that we really have to talk about
Oh God.
is the second subject. Go ahead, Varun.
I just when the film really comes undone is when they're like Obama, and then Obama. That's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, my notes on this were I actually liked the animation. I I thought it was an interesting way to depict a scene that we couldn't see. Um, I also said make all 2028 Dem nominations throw a 3-pointer before they see.
Uh,
But yeah, I agree. The Obama part was where it really fell apart for me because it was just like, again, is this just a guy that I mean, apart from like my own opinions on the man, like, is this just like because Obama likes to play basketball? Is there like a political utility to this? I don't really have a takeaway from this other than these two guys played basketball.
Well, I was thinking about this movie today, unfortunately, and like, um, and just like, I think they're trying to like elevate the status of Obama as comparable to Martin.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, and they're trying to like basically showcase this historical example of one of the greatest civil rights activists in this country, right? With Obama, which is like the second half of the movie.
That's where like Spencer to me it became like fully apolitical, where like
Yeah.
begins to fully take on the like linear liberal view of history, where like it's just one to the other when like these two men did extremely different things for America.
Yeah, I mean, like diametrically opposed ideologies at times.
Or
One was a warmonger. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, and none of that is explained. Like, none of like actual ideas behind the politics, the policies are talked about at all. And that's why I think I had mentioned this earlier to someone, but it was like, it's extremely neoliberal movie, like this constant focus on emotion and hope as this kind of abstract feeling instead of these kind of grounded actions, right?
Yeah.
With results.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the movies, at least in my opinion, so infuriating is the beginning acknowledges the reality of that in the context of the civil rights movement.
and with
I think
from today.
and you're hitting on something I think very important, Varun, and like Parker, you had messaged about this, is like it grounds itself in the material reality of the struggle with archival footage and with documentary footage. I think like adding in the animation not only like romanticizes it, but disconnects it from reality. Like we're just creating a fiction here. This is no longer a documentary.
Yeah.
Like
Obama anime.
yeah, like you can have. I mean,
left-handed and then cut to like
what's the difference between an animated retelling and like a reenactment? Like if it was shot out of focus with an actor playing Obama, like it's the same
Yeah.
kind of purpose, it's the same sort of execution, but I think it even goes more into the schmaltz and like the Hollywoodifying of the story of Obama.
Obama teleports behind you and goes, "Omae wa mo shinderu."
I was gonna say, like, Spencer, like, and I think like the deeply sinister thing, right, is I think the filmmakers like know that, and that's what they want to do. They genuinely believe in that type of politics, and so this is like I think they are like genuine in that, and that's what's just like like that fiction, that like romanticized reality. They genuinely think that that's like reality.
Yeah, and it's tricky. It's tricky because I understand that Obama means a lot of things to a lot of people, and he was a historical figure.
He's still alive, actually, but yeah.
He's still shooting threes, bro.
There must be some Berenstein Bears thing happening here. Could have sworn. No. He is he is a large historical figure that means a lot to a lot of people. But comparing him to Martin Luther King is just, it's lunacy.
Yeah,
And
it's crazy.
that's when it got my biggest eye roll. I was like, okay, this is the direction we're taking it.
And it's such a ridiculous thing too, because when they bring up the Obama like the first time, it's like this intricate story
Yes.
about this guy who didn't grow up with much. He climbed his way, to
It's this whole build up to a reveal. And that guy's name, Barack Obama.
yeah,
Needle drop, like
and then the cartoon happens and like Barack's face turns. You're just this is hell. It's like that's the second movie. I was like,
Any other?
yeah, I was ready to tap out. I was ready.
it is that back to back was like the America I like know very well. Like
That was a kill shot, dude.
I mean, I think we can wrap this up, but I think it's like my hope at this point for what was to come for the next hour and 20 minutes was very low. But thankfully it picked back up
It did.
with movie number 3.
Especially day 2. I know we'll talk about that, but day 2 has been fire.
Day 2's a banger.
Fire across the board.
Film number 3, Unholy, directed by Daisy Friedman. Noah attends her family's Passover Seder for the first time since being put on a feeding tube for a gastrointestinal disorder. There, she is confronted with pushy family members, malfunctioning medical devices, and a room of food she can't eat. Who would like to start?
I'll just kind of give my overview of it, and then you guys can take the discussion wherever you want. What I liked was the anxiety of the overbearing family, the pressure to like perform and conform to expectations, the stress of like disappointing people that mean a lot to you, and the whole sequence with the grandmother like forcing her to eat the soup like was really effective and like disturbing and good. I felt like we lost a little bit of that momentum. The end, like the last scene, especially with the father on the roof, just did not work for me. I think especially because they were taking this very specific like cultural experience of like this Jewish family. I would have liked to have seen the religious connection and practice like develop more because it ends on a note like that, and I didn't feel Noah's connection to it at all throughout the rest of the film. And yeah, that's just kind of like how I felt. I mean, and especially because like the father and her just like spell out the moral right at the end and kind of say this is what it's about. It did not like work for me emotionally like the rest of it did. The majority of it did.
I generally agree. I think like this was one of my favorites of the first day. I think to me it felt very kind of like Noah Baumbach-y, but the upper echelon of Noah Baumbach, in my opinion. Like like you said with the scene with the soup, it like at that point it just like turns into a horror movie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like I thought that was super effective with like the grandma standing over her shoulder. Like what the fuck is happening? I thought it was like an interesting Interesting take on what food can mean, um, in relation to, like, other people, your loved ones, and also in relation to your religion. I thought that was really interesting. And, like, how being just disconnected from the food can make you disconnected from your loved ones and your religion. Um, I agree the ending bit was, like, maybe a little over the top, but I don't think I minded it in the way that you did. Like, I thought the scene with her dad at the end was, like, very tender, and I liked the, like, "Alright, let's just get out of here," kind of, like, that felt very sweet and very earnest to me. Um, I think this is a little technical, but the grade on it felt a little weird. Like, I don't know what, like, the budget situation on the film was like, but it just felt like it was, like, a little drab and a little unsaturated and not in an intentional way.
Yeah, it felt a little just like technically dark, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I thought it like built the drama well and the sort of like cacophonous feeling. I wholly agree on the end. There was a spot actually where I thought it was gonna end. It's when she like after she sort of has her moment with like the food and not reacting well with it, she goes out to like the porch and there's like a really beautiful shot of just like her from behind, like silhouetted against like the city lights, and it like holds on that for like a couple seconds, and I really thought it was gonna end there. And I felt like it would have just like from my like taste would have ended like if it just like held on that shot for a while and then like
Yeah.
softly ended, because I feel like even though I liked the conversation, well, I didn't like love the conversation with that. Even though I liked the end part of like the his like sympathy for her, like which he hasn't really been giving throughout the film, like him finally giving that and recognizing that and like actually defending her because like no one else was like standing up for her when other people were
Yeah.
inflicting like pain on her. Seeing him do that was nice, but also just like seeing her like lone kind of suffering and isolation that like disability can like put on people, especially like we were saying from Alex, like the estrangement from her religion because she can no longer like digest food. I thought like the film was definitely building to like a nice a depiction of what that would be like.
Yeah, I would have liked to have either had, like, her father and her relationship built more throughout the film to, like, get the sense that he's going to be protective of her or he's going to comfort her, and even just ending on, like, a quiet recognition between father and daughter would have sufficed for me, just, like, even him hugging her would have been a nice way, but I agree with your take, Parker. I think, like, it would have cemented her sense of alienation from her family even more if she's just left alone to, like, contend with it. It's more melancholic and not, like, probably ultimately what the filmmakers wanted to communicate, but I think that, like, cements the feeling of disability and, like, illness, a lot more.
Just gonna
Ruin anything to add?
uh yeah, I really appreciated what you guys had to say, and like I think this is why these type of activities are so useful because like you catch you can't catch everything and people open it up. That idea of estrangement from religion and how your illness doesn't just sever, physical connections to food and familial connections, but also cultural connection. It's a really interesting idea that hadn't really dawned on me. So I really, I really like that. Um, Part of my takeaway, unfortunately, was not as positive as you guys. I felt very, while like I thought the execution of the film was good. That cacophony that you were talking about, Parker, how it builds the very, very focused, very, very not moving, you know what I'm saying? Like camera work during the dinner scenes, and then when her bag goes off and you go to the bathroom, right? It's handheld, right? Um, all of that, while I think it was executed well, it felt very, very spot on, you know? And it felt almost too perfect. And like my kind of main takeaway from the movie was it felt very Sundancey, right? You had this backdrop of culture, right? You had this disability, right? And then you insert that, you build the anxiety. I will say I love the ending. I really did like the ending. But yeah, that was kind of my main takeaway, where if you look at kind of all these values and all these things about the movie individually, they work and they're good. But when you look at it as a whole, it didn't gel for me.
All right, let's move on to number 4. Let me find it. A Round of Applause for Death, directed by Stephen Irwin. Death takes center stage and faceless spectators applaud the inevitable in a series of murderous dreams. Let me let my cat out real quick.
I was gonna say what I loved about this movie was where it was positioned in the film, because in the series of films. Like, I thought the curation of this was great, because it's like a total palate cleanser.
Yeah.
It's just like it is cool to do that. That was really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know much about animated movies. I don't watch a lot, so I feel like I'm speaking from a place of ignorance. And but I will say it didn't really work for me emotionally. I couldn't find a connection between sections, and I don't think you necessarily have to. I think you can just experience it as it is. Uh, Two issues that I had with it, or I guess one positive and one issue, is I wish that the film had embraced the like setting and the atmosphere that the animation style was provoking, because it was really visually rich and interesting, and like has that like liminal feeling of like a Salad Fingers or a Jack Stauber kind of art. Um, I wanted to experience more of the vacancy of this world, and I feel like sound design could have gone a long way in lifting that and letting each sequence breathe on its own without the persistence of the voiceover. I know, Varun, you have some feelings on that, but for me, I was desperate for a break from the repetition of the narration. It didn't move me in the way that the drawings were. So that's pretty much all I felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, my first note was, wouldn't blame my neighbors if they overheard this and called the cops. Uh, but it reminds me of a little bit of like Don Hertzfeldt's darker stuff, like in It's Such a Beautiful Day. I don't know if that's like guy who's only seen Paddington 2 thing. This give me Paddington 2 vibes. But like, but I do think like the animation feels very similar to like some of the darker stuff towards the end of It's Such a Beautiful Day.
Yeah, like the breakdown of his mind, kind of. Yeah.
Exactly. I think I kind of agree with you, Spencer. Like, I kind of don't know what to do with this. Like, good or bad, I don't really know. Um, it affected something in me, I guess. Like, just as a mood piece. I was engaged, but I appreciated how the voiceover. It didn't even sped up. It would just like start slightly sooner.
Yeah.
Once the last round was over, it would start earlier and earlier, and it would create this sort of sense of anxiety. Like, I thought that was really effective. But yeah, I agree. I kind of don't know what to do with this.
I felt the opposite of Spencer. I thought the animation style was really lackluster. I felt like it was too indebted to David Lynch. Like, a lot of David Lynch's early short films, like, looked like this. A lot of his paintings looked like this. It just,
Dumbland.
yeah,
Yeah.
just felt too like in that world, and it didn't really interest me. But the voiceover was really awesome. I thought it was super hypnotic. Just the actual words themselves, right? Um, they're just cool phrases and words, and just repeating them with that almost garish voice, over and over and over again. I I thought that was like a really effective technique. And I was gonna say too, I like that they include these type of shorts in the short film programs because like they are they're so abstract and you can like construe so many different meanings from them, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to pay attention to and what you want to enjoy, versus kind of the more dramatic, more traditional pieces where there is kind of a very particular meaning you're supposed to gain from it. And so I appreciated it. I'm not like the biggest fan. This isn't like my favorite thing, but after the 3 movies we just watching this, it was like a jolt, and I was like ready to continue on.
I think I have a nice perspective in between, where I liked the animation and like the style it was building, and I did fall into like the hypnotic nature of the repetition, and it kind of like started to get me, and then it like fizzled out and didn't really like build to anywhere like emotionally or atmosphere wise for me. But also I just like don't really like avant-garde movies. They just always all do that to me. So I'm just a Philistine or something. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's just all I always feel about them. But I enjoyed it. I didn't like the placement of it. I don't know. I just like
Yeah.
I kind of like things tonally to like match more in like a short film kind of like block, and I feel like all the Sundance ones are curated to try to like keep your mood up and down, which is definitely it's tough to watch a lot of short films back to back. Anyone that's like ever had to do it in person knows that it can become insufferable. But we could do it
Back
at our home, so I can pause and go walk around. But yeah, that from going like Unholy to Sweetheart felt, I don't know, I didn't like the whiplash. Like it was harder for me to like reorient myself to like fall into the next film.
Which also starts off with some serious whiplash.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Let's introduce it.
Film number, what number is this? 5?
Yep.
Sweetheart, directed by Luke Wintour. In 723 London, Thomas Neville is discovered cruising in the public toilets and forced to take refuge in a Molly house. There, he encounters a secret community as they prepare for a night of festivities. Who would like to go first?
I was gonna say, like, seeing that opening to this movie, I was like, yes, these movies have balls. Let's go. Literally.
Yeah, this was my favorite of the bunch so far. I thought it was really visually rich and compelling. It was maybe too dark at times, but I liked that. I liked resting in that sense of obscurity and secrecy, like the Molly houses themselves. I felt like we were getting atmosphere for the first time in the film collection too. Like there was a nice pace to it. We were seeing interesting shots and compositions and like new lighting setups, great production design, like a lot of technical feats were being accomplished in this film that were not being accomplished in the earlier films. And that could just be budgetary, whatever, but like this felt like it had a better grasp of itself and its material and had a clear vision. And I think it executed on it pretty well. Um, this is like a bigger debate that maybe we can come to another time in the discussion, but like I feel like the Sundance shorts, there's always the question of, is this a proof of concept for a feature or is this a short film? And this, like I read an article by the filmmakers, this is their attempt to like make a splash for it to become a feature film. I think it's the most deserving of the bunch so far. Like it feels, I guess, the most material to pull from to create something that's suspended in a longer length. And yeah, I mean, emotionally, the sense of shame of our protagonist and like trying to find a way to fit in, even in a place where he should be accepted, that was moving to me. Like I felt the stakes in his arc. So
I was gonna say, like, this one felt like a world,
Yeah.
Every movie we had watched, I at least I didn't feel that, but this felt like a world.
totally.
It felt like complete. Like that last scene where there's the like there's like he's like leaving, it's the day everybody's leaving, and there's the guy dressed up still, and there's the sun on half of his face, and he still has his makeup, and he's wearing this beautiful blue dress, and he's singing this song about fucking dudes. Like I was like, man, like whoa, like there's so much to explore here.
Yeah.
So the historical context at the end of the movie, um, where they describe this term Molly, and they describe that this was like an actual thing. It just makes you question, like, how did these groups get started? What, like, who, and there's all sorts of ages, right? There's older people all the way to the younger generation. And it's like, how did this get started? How did this propagate? How did this continue on for the better part of a decade? It made me question so many things about that world, and it felt so good. I was reminded of Paris is Burning a lot, where there's this like secretive underground world, literally, that these people go to be themselves. And it's just like, I mean, it's a resonant theme, right? It's a beautiful theme, and I just thought that was expressed so well in the movie. And it looks gorgeous. The production design is like,
Yeah.
all the costumes are just fantastic. I'd love to see a feature of this. Like, that would, like,
Yeah.
it's a big world to explore, which would be sick.
I agree. I think this was a weird one for me, because I think this was one I wasn't as hot on right as I finished it, but the more I think about it, the more I like it. Um, I love the atmosphere of it, like you guys were saying. I do think I agree with Spencer. I think it was a little too dark at some points. Like, I appreciate atmosphere. I also like to be able to see what's going on, and I think you can accomplish atmosphere by, like, what they would do at points in this film is they would, like, highlight a certain section of the frame, and then everything else was kind of enshrouded in darkness. There were some points where it was just, like, a little too much for me. Costume design was gorgeous. Um, it's interesting that I thought it was like a speculative period piece and not like an actual piece of history as I was watching it. But like you're saying, Varun, the fact that this is like an actual piece of history is so cool to me, and I just want to learn more. I would like to know more about it. Like everyone was saying, this has great feature potential. I would love to know more about this world. Like, I thought the intimate moments in this were really beautiful. There's like a lot of like really fun, kind of jubilant moments that were really enjoyable. Like the sense of community there, I thought was really beautiful.
I was just gonna say, on top of all that too, there's like jealousy, betrayal. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Dude, and there's like
Fear.
some great spectacle as well with like the wedding and then the fucking birth too. That was crazy. That was an amazing
Crazy.
like set piece, and to pack it all into like such a short runtime and make it feel warranted too. Of like, this is a disorienting night for this guy, and he's just getting dropped into this whole new like Oz land, and he's just having to find his way through it. And we as an audience are trying to understand it and find our way through it too. It's a great piece of like audience perspective character work as well.
No, I love the similar to Alex, like I like the film first time around, but I think it's the film that like I watched it yesterday, the film I've thought about most today. Um the only kind of like I agree that was a little dark, and the cutting was so fast. I just like could not orient myself in the space. Luckily the film's like 25 minutes, I feel like, so like I eventually got into the atmosphere well. But I really love the way like it depicts like the importance of history and recording, and these sort of like the sort of uh guy who like runs this specific Molly house like is depicted at the end as like, keeping like a record book of every single
Yeah.
person who came through the space and what they did. And it's really like starts to get at like much deeper ideas of like history and underground histories and histories that had to hide themselves, and also the importance of like keeping those records so that like, you know, underground like cultures and people like disbanded can like build community through that sort of like relationship. And I think like it, I think it'll become a feature. There's no way someone won't make this a feature. I feel like it has to be. It's like
Yeah, I agree.
it's the first film that like in this bunch that's like this is like a fucking movie, like this is like
Yeah.
Yeah,
what I'm here to like watch, and like the fact that the film just went all the way in, like full depictions of sex, full depictions of nudity, like didn't care,
Confidently.
and that it like played and got, and that it was actually like picked, I think is like really cool and like a good moment where I feel like Sundance did that very well. And
Mhm.
not being afraid to like have a film like this that, people might be casted against or might hate for like those specific depictions, but to actually like take a risk where in most of the other things we've seen that are not taking any risks in either their like curation or film wise. It was nice to see like a risk taking film.
I agree, and I think to your point as well, um, the thing that sort of reminded me of that Flowers reminded me of as well, even more so, is just like the that we'll get to later. Uh, it's just like the fragility of history, you know? Like the fact that this is like based on that ledger, you know? Like I don't know, that's just something like ve very crazy to me, like to think about the amount of history that has occurred that we will never be privy to, because it was never documented.
But it's like the very like age old use of cinema where it's like you're bringing and bearing witness to something forgotten.
Exactly.
That
Exactly.
through script, through building that world, you're you're bearing witness to it. One thing I wanted to bring up, which um is like big ups to the filmmakers who made this, um, is a lot of our discussion has focused on the how this is like a potential feature and how everything we want in a feature film is there. But I think that indirectly kind of speaks to the mastery of the short form that's expressed in this film, like short film as its own medium, where there is so much depth of detail and so many things that you can latch onto in this movie, uh, and it's only like 20-25 minutes.
Mhm.
And I think like the ability to do that and the ability, I think that speaks to just that short form. Like
Yeah. Agreed.
just like the introduction of the married character, right? So like, he's fucking this dude, and then they go to the Molly house, and then he gets married to this person that he has been seeing, and it's very visible to everybody else. Everybody knows he's been seeing this other guy. And the jealousy then that's added on that. And then the separation as they have their moment, and how that leads to this beautiful exploration of this house and the character putting on makeup and looking at himself in the mirror that's like one image that I thought a lot about since this, where it's like he's hiding himself inside this community, it's becoming a part of them and learning their traditions, learning how to be one of them. I just think, yeah, I think we could talk about this movie for a very long time.
I agree. Let's move on to number, what is this, 6? We have Upper, directed by Lenaire Madu. I know I'm mispronouncing that. I apologize. Uh, Waiting for an asteroid to pass through the sky, two friends play around a remote landscape driven by a curious urge to constantly aim higher.
This was my favorite, I think, from the first block. Definitely what I've been revisiting in my mind a lot more. I think, like, for a short film, this was, like, pretty perfectly paced, at least for, like, what I want out of something in this medium. The use of time and the confidence of, like, sitting here on shots for an extended period of time, I'm thinking of one composition in particular where the two characters are like lounging and the laptop's there and she's like replaying the clip and the camera, focuses on her and then focuses back on him and we're in it for a minute. I didn't get the like the story, the whole asteroid thing that didn't like come through apparently to me. I don't think that really matters though, because the kind of drifting of these very young people, the like sense of longing and directionlessness that's present in that sort of prepubescent age of like wanting to grow up, wanting to accomplish something, wanting to do something, striving for something, but not having the material means to do it or like the age and the maturity. That's what I felt in there. And I was really duly impressed with like the depth of character in these unremarkable moments. I felt the like connection between the two leads. I felt their differences and also their similarities. Um, One formal technique that I didn't like were the repeated stills, the black and white stills. I felt it was really overdone and I think could have been saved for closer to the end, especially with its like kind of clicking sound design. Like I feel if you had preserved that for just one particular moment, it would have been gangbusters. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Upper.
Yeah, I would largely agree. I think it was probably my favorite of the bunch here. Beautifully shot. And
So-
not ju-
That's what you.
yeah, I was gonna say not just beautifully shot, but like the color in it, both like the grade of the color and the use of color within the film is incredible, dude.
So
Um,
one shot I've been thinking about. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to throw this in while we're on this point.
is it the tire one?
Yeah, dude. With
Dude, the fucking
cl-
tire
with
shot
the
where
clouds,
she's going
bro.
into the
Oh,
sky
so
is
good, dude.
incredible.
Yeah, the clouds are really good.
Yeah, shit was
The other thing I put for this is location. The use of the location here, whatever they were at, it was like a stone quarry.
yeah.
It looked insane.
That
It looked like a Martian landscape.
So when we cut from the house in the first like 2 minutes to that wide shot, and we hear like the footsteps crinkling, and it's just panning on the mountain, and you see the texture of the rock.
Totally.
Awesome.
Incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah, I also like, and one of the notes I put was just like, I love how nebulous this feels, how alien everything feels. Like, they're the only two people we see throughout the entire film.
You hear the mom, but you
You
never
hear
see it.
you hear the mom,
And
and
you're never
you
getting
can hear like cars passing too occasionally,
Yeah.
but it's very isolated. It feels very alien. Um, like you know, if it wasn't for the laptop on that one scene,
Mhm.
like this could take place in like 1920, and I wouldn't know. You know, uh,
And that's
really, I don't know, just like a really interesting film, and I agree. I didn't like pick up on the asteroid thing as much, but this director went full bore into this concept, and it really paid off. I thought it was really cool. I really enjoyed it.
what I loved about the inclusion of the technological detail was that it happens like 6 minutes into the movies. So to speak to that like nebulous point, right? You don't know what era they're in.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
When you look at their costumes too, they look like they're from the past, right? Like they're dressed like they're from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweetheart like created a world that I wanted to be in, but this is a film that for me like was the first film to like really attempt like using atmosphere as to tell the narrative and to create that like very distinct feeling of like being a kid and playing out in a field in open world and it becomes like a different world, like they're interacting in this like sand quarry like kind of like hell in a way, but like for them it is like literally it's like being like someone said like the Martian landscape. It's like playing on Mars. And I just remember having those kind of places as a kid where you would do that and create your own world. And then I did catch on to the asteroid narrative and I was like waiting for it and waiting for it to like try to take me to that like transcendent moment with it at the end. I don't know if it like fully delivered on that for me, but I really liked all the build up to it.
something that I don't know why this came to mind, but I kept thinking about this sequence during the film was, do you guys remember in Wim Wenders' Wrong Move? There's like that 10-minute long scene where they're just all on a walk going up a hill.
I haven't seen.
I haven't seen that one.
I felt like we watched it during quarantine, but anyway,
We did the road trilogy. The one.
yeah, that's in there. That's the one with like the dejected writer who's sad.
That one is that the second one?
Yeah, that's the second one. That's after Alice in the Cities. Doesn't matter. I mean, I'm talking about something that nobody remembers, so it doesn't matter. But there's a scene where they're all like just kind of wandering up a hill, and it struck me as like being upper having this kind of similar tone of just the Sisyphusian like climb towards nothing, the continual like exercise towards something. I'm not like reaching for some grand, like profound statement, but I just like, I love that feeling of endurance, that like seeking of higher elevation, the like want to accomplish. And for some reason, I related these two images in my mind from those two films. And I thought it was just, yeah, I thought it was just really cool that that was like present here. And especially with its beautiful photography and like sitting on those wides of the quarry, like just just gorgeous stuff.
I loved the attention to I got a real like I didn't pick up on the asteroid narrative, but this movie to me and I took this away. This is me kind of projecting my own opinion onto it regardless of what narrative actually is because it is so kind of oblique what this film is. But yeah, imagine this film as a purgatory which these kids inhabit and they have this kind of endless sense of time as they wait for true death, you know, where they're going heaven or hell, you know? And that's kind of how I imagined it. And like there's so many little details to decay, like the opening shot, the first thing you hear is flies. And there's this constant sound motif of flies throughout the movie. The tires are all used up and decaying, right? When you look at the interior of the house, the mirror in the bedroom is corroded, right? The walls feel broken down and abandoned. The mattress looks old. The splinters on the board are just decayed. And so all those visual details contribute to this like desiccated atmosphere that permeates through the film. And that ending too is like it's beautiful, man. Like that ascension, you know, he's like floating. The one shot I think about the most from that sequence though is the girl looking up and like her hair is like blowing and you just see this like phantasmagoric blue light and her eyes are like reflecting it and it holds for like 25 seconds. And like that was great. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Great film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not my favorite though. Not my favorite of the day.
All right. Last of block one. We have Susana, directed by Geraldo Coelho Escalante and Amandine Thomas. A middle-aged American tourist finds herself alone in Mexico City when she encounters a group of young Americans. She jumps at the opportunity for a little adventure. How do we feel about this one?
This was my favorite film. This is
Really?
my favorite film. Yeah. That's a dark pick. This is and like I had Spencer, I read your Letterboxd review and like, dude, I mean, that's what the movie's about, you know, like 100%. That's what the movie's about. For everybody's information, Spencer's very, very astute, Letterboxd review is about how essentially tourism is just a new form of colonialism and how you don't actually engage with cultures. And a lot of times you harm the culture that you're actually visiting. And there's a lot of visual motifs and there's a lot of ways that this theme reoccurs. And this is like a really, really, really selfish way to watch a movie. But I just found the concept of a middle-aged woman by herself in a city where she doesn't speak the language, where she's essentially a complete loner. And like her daughter has just like completely rejected her. I just find that so romantic. And like I just was like, I don't know, I was just so moved by Susana. Even though she is a dick in a lot of respects, you know? Even
Mhm.
and like her clunkiness, you know, it's just
It walks a really interesting line between having Susanna being endearing and having her be shitty.
yeah, because her earnestness, you know, like
Mhm.
it's so believable, and it just makes you want to give her a hug. And I found like that dichotomy of like her as this tragic figure so endearing, like just so moving. Like I was rooting for her, you know, the whole movie.
It
And
I th I mean, honestly, that was almost a shortcoming for me, was that I didn't know like, I was torn between rooting for her and being annoyed with her throughout the entire film. Because like, especially towards the end when she takes, like, the boat for $200 to herself and, like, kicks off that, like, birthday party that's happening.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a, like, a blatantly shitty thing that I feel like is, like, something she's consciously doing.
but then
Uh
you think about, I'm sorry to I just got to respond to this, but then like she's completely oblivious, like idiotically oblivious in that moment of just how rude she's being.
I know,
I
I agree, but I think in that moment, it's not endearing, it's like, "Come on,
But
man."
I like
the pain, like her daughter just abandoned her.
I have to agree with Varun on this because I think the best part of the film is Susanna. Like she's an
I
instantly
agree.
iconic character.
I know.
You know, like from the costume design to the actress, like, and I like the fact that she's a complicated character. Like a protagonist can be shitty and endearing, you know, and like
Yeah.
short films
Do
do
that.
not approach that because it's hard to like communicate a non like binary character that isn't
Sure will.
all good or all bad.
In regards to the boat scene at the end, which is like, I just think like the way to describe it is like tragic because it's tragic in so many different ways. Like,
I agree,
yeah,
yeah.
like for dollars or pesos, clearly the like Mexican family who's trying to take this trip is going to pay him in pesos. And but once she comes with $200, he's like, no, even though like he's also Mexican, he's like, no, fuck you. Like he becomes implicated and it
Yeah.
has like his livelihood is dependent on tourism while this tourism is like also affecting
Like
and harming other people's lives, like the indigenous people in the country and Mexicans living in there. And I like that part, how it implicates the like tragedy of colonialism on like so many different levels.
yeah, and it's like it's the tragedy of colonialism. I also think it's just, like, the tragedy of tourism that, like, the more people learn about beautiful things and the more they get discovered, the more those and those cultures will begin to cater to tourists.
Yeah. Well, like commodifies history, right? Like,
But but that's capitalism. That's not exploring, right?
no.
And it's like beautiful things are meant to be discovered. And that's why when she's on that river and she just looks out and she's just amazed at this part of the world that she never thought she would be in, and through circumstances that, you know, she kind of caused idiotically on her own way, but also she couldn't control. She's just, you know, she's just in this divine, enchanting environment. And
Mhm.
like, yeah, I love that. You know, I love her as a character. I
I
really,
I wanted to just kind of on a separate discussion of it, like wanted to point out I love the all the extras, all the side characters in this movie. Like
Yeah,
it would be really great. The little kid like selling his shit to her, like hilarious. The boat driver, the dude playing guitar, like there were some really rich, just like interesting side characters that the camera would drift to and like let us learn a little bit about. Um one of
I'm
my
curious.
parts of
I'm
it.
curious how this was filmed because it felt super like run and gun to me almost. Like all of the environment she was in felt very real.
Yeah. The shitty young American tourists, like, perfect, just like the most grossly consumptive pigs you've ever seen, just like lounging about and recklessly hedonic behavior in this like land that they have zero respect for, zero care for, that they'll never return to again, just getting wasted and then continuing that theme of like that you brought up, Varun, too, of abandoning Susanna. Like, I loved her alienation and isolation, and like that her only refuge as like a senior citizen too is to go and buy experiences. That's like the classic snowbird moving to Florida or going on a cruise. Like, you have no family that cares for you, so you go and purchase experience.
Yeah. But also like at that point that she's in, right? Like in this new city, right? With no one, you know, what else are you gonna do? It's like I thought too, like what's interesting about those hedonistic characters was like they fucking suck. Don't get me wrong, they fucking suck. You use the term pigs, and the only reason they recognize her is because she's also a tourist,
Mhm.
but they recognize her again, and they make an effort to connect, and that is what again separates this kind of movie from like some other type of movies that deal with the subject matter, is like those characters still have that kind of depth. And yeah, they end up abandoning her, and a lot of them, when they're interacting with her, just kind of ignore her, when they're in her vicinity. But there's two characters in particular, the actual Mexican guy that's part of that, and then the young girl who recognizes her.
Yeah, you spilled the
Drop her
coffee on
water.
her or whatever.
Yeah, yes.
Do you think they connect with her because they care though? To me, it felt like she was just a plaything for them, like something that's sort of funny to be like, oh, we partied with this old lady, ha ha ha.
Yeah. I think I got that vibe, but I also got that vibe where it's like they are like objectifying her in many, many ways, and it's cruel in many, many ways. But Susanna's earnestness in that scene just kind of defeats it. Because when she goes on that dance floor, it is like redemptive. Even if it is meant to be ironic, I'm just gonna interpret it as not ironic.
Okay.
Because I like believe, I love
Sam
Susanna.
in the movie. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
What did everyone something I've kind of been like struggling with of how to like approach the film is like, what did everyone think of the film opens with like an indigenous ritual and Susanna like awestruck by the spectacle of it, which I thought was a great way to like open this piece that's like about tourism. But what did everyone think of the like going back to the indigenous like characters in the bar sequence? Like,
One of the coolest club scenes ever, bro.
yeah, it made it like I liked it, but I really liked it, and it like makes very direct the like contrast between like sort of so hello Ingrid, uh between like tourism and colonialism. But I was like I was disappointed that that wasn't like brought back, you know what I mean? Like,
I felt like that was like a sequence where I could see them wrestling with whether to cut it or include it. Where it's like, do we need this to drive home the purpose of our film? Like, is this an effective like set piece to raise the stakes of it? Of like, to me, it worked beautifully. Of like her being the watcher to then being the watch of like all these, indigenous, people just watching the tourists bumble about, and like there's contempt in their eyes, there's frustration, and I think like to me, you needed that to like express the frustrated relationship of tourism to a tourist destination, and to bring it back. Like, I don't think they needed to bring it back. I felt to me like it was strong enough to have as its own sequence to seal the deal on what the movie was about. to then like leave us with that impression for the remainder of it. Like you're giving a really sour taste of Susana, and I felt that within myself for the rest of the movie, where I was like, this, this lady just sucks, and I hate everything that she's doing. And I felt myself like take on the gaze of those contemptuous individuals in the bar.
For sure.
I thought it was a really good use of like very dreamlike imagery. Is just to shift the way the bringing back of these characters. They're directly staring into the camera. Is from like just an aesthetic perspective, like is just so evocative, especially placing them in a club scene that it's a very Western, very United States-esque environment, like when you see their drinks, they're in like very nice bejeweled glass,
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool club scene. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was definitely one where I would like to see it. What tons of themes and how deep you could get with things in a feature,
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I
It's just
agree.
like I just like with every short film, that's how I always feel. I never spend enough time to truly be emotionally involved. Like that's just how I feel with everything. Like I know what you're about to say, Brun, is that it did work for you and it did do it. But like for me, like I just like didn't get to spend enough time in the world to like come away first watch with like everything I need to know, everything I want to know about the world, And
Watch it again. Another 15 minutes.
could watch it again, but like,
No, I get where you're coming from, Parker, but I was gonna
that's
say
not a thing with the film. That's a me thing.
no, yeah, no, but it's a great point. What I was gonna say was kind of the opposite of that, right? Where it's like I agree, like yeah, you could take this and you could make it a feature, but what I love about this movie is it works so well as a short because this relationship with the daughter isn't like elaborated on. And it seems like if you were to take this and make it into a feature, that is something you would elaborate on.
That's true too, but like I feel like with it being a short, it forced the filmmakers to not make like conventionally dramatic choices, which I appreciate. Of course, like the feature, maybe they would have chosen to do so, but I mean, with the kind of films like that we are drawn to, like that's what we would have liked out of a feature, regardless,
I am.
or a family regardless.
Are you saying that in a feature film, like you would have liked conventionally dramatic choice?
No, I'm saying like I don't know the filmmakers. I don't see anything. I'm saying like maybe they would have been more likely to like use that like conventionally dramatic technique of like her being starting with her on the phone with her daughter, the waiting, the thing, instead of like with the short, it like gets right into where she's at. She's been abandoned, and doesn't explain it until like the character's in a situation where she's forced to explain it, which that's a very organic way to like tell a story, which I appreciated.
Yeah. And I love how it's left at that.
Yeah.
She just makes this mention of a job and the conversation changes.
Yeah.
The characters, like to Spencer's point about how fucking awful these human beings are, is like this character shares this very vulnerable moment, and then the characters are just like, oh, I was supposed to be on a cruise,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like but yeah, no, I fucking I loved I love that, and that's why I love short films, is when you make a conventional and dramatic choice, you leave these threads uncut so that you can continue to think about them, and that deepens the world, at least for me. Yes, you could explore it and you could flesh out one or two more of these threads in the feature film, but like then you've kind of answered it,